I'm assuming y'all can see my screen, but my name is Jill Klang, and I'm here to talk about life on Rails Edge. I am a developer who's done a lot of Rails upgrades. In 2017, I did my first production Rails upgrade. I forget what version it was, but it was the one where they put strong parameters in. Really important thing, but it was the application that we were upgrading had thousands of controllers, and we had to put strong parameters in every single one of the controllers, and it took forever, and it was a giant pain to do. And then in 2021, I joined a team that one of their big things was like getting to a more modern version of Rails. And so from 2021 until 2025, I was basically always upgrading Rails, and it was a big pain. Major and minor versions were pretty painful in that application, and was pretty difficult to do. And then in 2025, I joined the Ruby on Rails infra team at Shopify, and they do weekly Rails upgrades. And at that point, I realized there's a better way to do Rails upgrades, and doesn't necessarily have to be as hard. Yes, and feel free to put your questions in the chat and I can answer them afterwards. But yes, weekly Rails upgrades, I'll definitely talk about that. Also, sometimes I kickbox, and what I realized is that Rails Edge is the same as any kind of workout. If you do a 3-hour workout occasionally, it's going to be really hard. But if you do like a 1-hour workout or a 20-minute workout several times a week, it gets a lot easier to do. So ultimately, I feel like living on Rails Edge doesn't have to be a super scary thing. It's really just about having a strong training plan. And once you figure out and form a plan, it becomes more like muscle memory and not like the big scary thing that it may be doable for you. I also realized that there's like references to companies and teams that do Rails Edge upgrades, but there's not a lot of like information out there about how it works. So I really wanted to talk about that. First, I did kind of want to give a little bit of background, just level set about what Rails Edge is. It really does just mean running your application off of main and updating with any kind of regular cadence. So while we mostly do it weekly, you could be doing it monthly, you could be doing it quarterly, as long as you're like regularly updating and going off of the main branch, that is Rails Edge for you. So sometimes in production, your gem file may be like gem Rails and then point to a specific major or minor version. For Shopify, it points to the main branch on GitHub. There's also like a question about like, why would you want to do this? Why wouldn't you want to do a version upgrade? There's lots of reasons to do it. There's better opportunities to contribute to open source. I love contributing to open source. It feels really good to do so, to give back to the community in that way. It's also an opportunity to feel like you can do things the right way and have the change next week. Where like I was on a team that we were upgrading versions that were no longer supported. And so we felt like we had to kind of patch things and do things that we didn't love doing. If you're on Rails Edge, you can kind of help contribute to Rails and have that contribution take effect pretty immediately. And then thinking about contributions, there's kind of 3 different types of contributions that we do for Rails Edge. The first one is an enhancement. So maybe there's already a feature for Rails. Like in this case, there's parallel testing is in Rails, but making it a little bit easier to do. So one of my coworkers opened a pull request to just like have an ID and make it globally available for parallel testing. There's also the idea of like a fix. So there may be something in Rails that you see like a little issue with, and it's a pretty quick fix to do, or a more intense fix to do, depending on what it is. You can write in little fix. So in this case, local cache middleware wasn't updatable after the application had booted. And so I had another coworker that opened a pull request to fix that so it could be available to everybody. And then finally, the person who is presenting this call, Adriana, she helped get a brand new feature into Rails that recently came in with Rails 8.1. And she coordinated the structured event reporting in Rails, this whole feature that we did. on our team. And we were able to do this in part because we were able to get it into the Shopify application so quickly. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And like, we do a lot of like stress testing at scale to make it easier for smaller companies to be able to upgrade Rails and really benefit from features and fixes. There is a Rails upgrade that we are trying to do in our application, I think literally right now, or maybe as of last week, where there was another team that kept pinging us and being like, when is this commit going to get into Shopify? When is this commit going to get into Shopify? We really want this feature from Rails that's upstream and we need to get it in. So they really do benefit from having like the most up-to-date things in Rails Edge. Now here's like the little meat of it. Like, how do Edge upgrades actually work? Like, how do we do this in practice? Honestly, it's a pretty simple 3-step process. So the first step is literally just to update. We can run like a simple bundle update conservative Rails. I'll talk about what the conservative means a little bit later, but it really just bumps like a specific revision to a specific SHA in your gemfile.lock. So that's just making the update is the first step. The next step is to test it. Obviously, we have CI that runs. It also includes like reading through the commits that have been made. So there's like the link here, the QR code links to like a specific diff in Rails. And when you are doing it every week, it's a lot easier to read through all of the changes that have been made and make sure that like if there's anything specific that you need to pull out, there's anything that you need to call out. It's a lot easier to do that when you're doing it weekly as opposed to when you're doing it every 2 years or whatever. And then the last piece is just to put any fixes that need in. So recently I did an update for Rails that brought in some like a PR that helped prevent compromising code from being introduced into your application. And there were some places in the application that were like, mostly the tests were like doing things that Rails was like, I don't like, this doesn't seem right. So I was able to update every single place in the Shopify application, the monolith application that that called that out and just make the code base a little bit more secure. So that's kind of the 3 pieces of it. And really it is that simple. Shopify has been happily doing Rails Edge since February 2019. And it's really just like about these, like going through this process. As far as how we keep the mechanics small, we do have a little bit of a playbook that we use, like some guiding principles to help keep this like this simple process that is. So I'll kind of go through a little bit of those rules that we live by to keep the Rails Edge upgrades pretty quick and easy. I do want to kind of give a caveat that like Rails Edge isn't for everyone. It is for mature organizations. It does take a dedicated team to kind of help keep this, like, it's not the only thing that this team does, but it does take somebody dedicated to help keeping this ongoing. So if you want like advice and guidelines about upgrading in general, the fabulous Eileen does have a talk that I've linked to here to talk about just upgrades in general. But as far as a playbook, the first thing we do is keep it small. This is where the conservative flag comes in. So when we upgrade Rails, we don't upgrade any other gems that don't need to be upgraded. And that's what conservative does. It's not going to upgrade anything that doesn't need it. And so you're not bringing in upgrades from a whole bunch of other dependencies that may have like breakages. And keeping it small helps you feel more confident and much more easily wrap your head around what's in the upgrade itself. We also are really focused on writing tests that we can trust. I think if you're doing things incrementally at all ever, you need fast and efficient testing. If your team doesn't have good practices and culture around testing, that would be like my first recommendation is to like get those practices in place, get good practices for testing, and get a good culture around like what is important for testing, because we really rely on that when we're doing such consistent upgrades versus a lot of manual testing end to end. And the final thing that we do is stick to public APIs. So you know something is a public API if it's in the documentation. I've linked the documentation here. There's lots and lots of methods in Rails, but if the method is not listed in the public documentation, the general rule is don't use it. When you open a pull request in Rails itself, one of the things that the Rails core maintainers look for is if you're using a public or private API. And if you're using a public API, and you're changing the public API, they require you to go through a deprecation cycle before you open the pull request. So, but they don't require you to do that if you're using a private API. So what that means is if you are using private APIs in Rails, it could get removed from Rails, or the behavior could get modified at any time. And that next version could change for you. So if you stick to the public APIs, then that deprecation cycle happens, and then you'll be much more aware, like this is changing and I need to change the behavior in my application. So just along with that, the idea of monkey patching, it's worth saying monkey patches should be used with extreme caution. They can be a hidden source of issues. So if you're using a monkey patch in your app, be very careful around it, document it very well, and make sure that when you're testing things, it's really well tested, because this is very commonly a source of issues when you're doing Rails upgrades. And that's about it. Rails is such, like, one of the things I like about working with Rails is how mature it is. It's getting better and stronger. And if you stay on Rails Edge, it's a common way to like get stronger with it. I love contributing to open source. I love the opportunity that Rails Edge gives me to do that, and just kind of feeling like I can keep my app in shape, as opposed to my previous job where I was spending so many hours upgrading Rails. It's really become such a small part of what I do, and I'm really enjoying that. And really, that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, but that's all I have to say.